So just last week, we saw President Trump declare an emergency right there in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, pretty big move.
Huge. Effectively taking direct control of the city's police force. Federal agents, the National Guard, suddenly they're deployed all over the streets.
And Attorney General Pam Bondi, she moved fast, announced, what was it, nearly 200 arrests.
That's right. Targeting serious offenders. We're talking murder suspects, drug traffickers, gun offenders. And now the president is apparently eyeing Chicago.
Promising a similar crackdown on what he calls its crime-ridden streets.
And the FBI, well, under Director Kash Patel, they've reported this really striking surge, 19,000 arrests nationwide this year.
Wow, 19,000.
Get this, that's double last year's figures, double, including 4,000 child rescues, which is remarkable.
That's a huge number of rescues.
So this whole approach, this bold federal strategy, it claims it's making our cities safer, through decisive action. But what does this actually mean for the really complex world of crime fighting in America?
And how does it stack up against what we think is happening, on our streets?
Exactly. Today, we're diving deep into an issue that touches every community. This complex, often contentious fight against crime, and how federal power is pretty dramatically reshaping it.
Okay, so you've shared a stack of sources, and they detail this evolving interplay, right, between federal, state, and local folks in tackling crime.
Yeah.
Our mission, then, is to unpack this dynamic. We need to explore these recent, high-profile federal interventions, the reported successes of this law and order agenda,
Right.
and also that significant gap between what people think is happening with crime and what the actual statistics might be showing.
And the politics behind it all, too.
Oh, absolutely. We'll look at the political undercurrents shaping these decisions and, how they actually play out on the ground.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The first thing that really jumps out, and it's quite a powerful statement, isn't it, is this direct federal intervention we just saw in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, August 11th.
August 11th, President Trump declares an emergency because of violent crime. And he actually used a specific part of the D.C. Home Rule Act.
Section 740, I think.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Which is, the unique federal law that gives D.C. its limited self-governance.
Yeah.
And it allowed him to place the D.C. Metropolitan Police under federal control for up to 30 days.
Which is a really significant move, putting federal authority directly in charge of a local police force. It doesn't happen often.
No.
And what truly stands out here is just the sheer scale and the speed of that deployment.
Right.
Almost immediately after the declaration, boom.
Right away.
You saw this substantial presence of federal law enforcement, Homeland Security, FBI, DEA, plus the D.C. National Guard right there on the streets.
Yeah.
And Attorney General Pam Bondi, she's overseeing it all. And she's already announced nearly 200 arrests just since the federalization started.
And these weren't minor things.
No, not at all. Homicide suspects, drug traffickers, illegal gun offenders, even 2 sexual predators mentioned. The message from the administration, well, our sources highlight it pretty clearly. President Donald Trump wants to see bad guys prosecuted, illegals deported, and corrupt politicians held accountable.
It's a very strong statement about, reasserting federal authority.
Definitely.
And it doesn't look like it stops with D.C., does it?
It seems so.
President Trump has already sort of hinted at expanding these federal deployments.
Yeah.
To other cities he calls crime-ridden.
Right, he mentioned Chicago specifically.
Yeah, Chicago as a target for cleanup, especially after that violent night there, August 21st, when 3 people were shot dead.
So this isn't just a one-off for D.C. It sounds like part of a broader strategy.
That's what it feels like.
It absolutely seems to be. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the administration's stated intent is, it's ambitious, make America safe again.
We've heard that before.
And the ultimate goal, they say, is making America the safest country in the world. It's a huge declaration, aiming for a dramatic national impact far beyond just D.C.
And to back this up, we're seeing some pretty significant leadership shifts within key federal agencies.
Yeah, definitely. Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI Director Kash Patel, they've brought on Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. As an additional FBI co-deputy director, so he's serving alongside Deputy Director Dan Bongino.
That's quite a team they're building there.
Well, Bailey's background, it really shows why he might have been chosen for such a, crucial high-level federal role.
Okay, tell me about him.
He's a decorated war veteran, for starters, and as Missouri's Attorney General, he apparently built a very impressive track record.
How so?
Our sources detail his pretty aggressive efforts tackling human trafficking, launched a task force, addressed over 1,100 incidents.
Wow.
He also famously cleared those backlogs of sexual assault forensic evidence kits, the SAFE kits, which is, critical for getting prosecution.
Absolutely vital.
Plus, he consistently defended local police and reportedly boosted criminal prosecutions dramatically, like a 133% increase at the trial court level.
133%. That's huge.
Yeah. And he's also known for holding public officials accountable. It's a profile that seems to align perfectly with a robust law and order agenda.
Okay, so federal power is clearly being wielded in a big way.
Yeah.
But what about the actual numbers? Are they telling a story of success here?
That's the key question, isn't it?
The FBI's results under Director Kash Patel just this year, they're genuinely jaw-dropping. And this is where it gets really interesting if you're tracking crime trends.
Okay.
They've reported 19,000 arrests nationwide in 2025. Now think about that. 19,000, that's double the total arrests made in all of 2024.
That's not just an increase, that's an explosion.
It's a massive acceleration. And within those numbers, they've made 1,600 arrests for violent crimes against children, including 270 human traffickers.
270 traffickers?
Plus 1,000 arrests coming from investigations into foreign terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. And they even caught 3 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted.
So major targets being brought in.
Seems like it.
And it goes beyond just the arrests, too. They mentioned rescuing 4,000 child victims this year alone.
4,000.
Which is a significant jump, 33% up from 2024. And on the drug front, the seizures sound equally impactful. 1,500 kilograms of fentanyl.
Yeah.
And 6,300 kilograms of methamphetamines taken off the streets.
Yeah.
I mean, what's striking here is just the sheer scale and intensity of these operations. They seem aimed at really dismantling criminal networks and protecting vulnerable people.
It definitely sounds like sustained pressure.
That's exactly what the administration seems to have set out to achieve.
Those numbers are undeniably impactful. Doubling arrests, rescuing thousands of kids. It's a monumental effort. And I heard that a senior official even claimed that, given these efforts, the murder rate is on track to be the lowest ever recorded in history.
That's a very bold claim.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when you think about how high crime seemed to be or felt just a few years ago. It suggests a major shift, or at least a significant federal investment in changing the crime trajectory.
It certainly points to a highly aggressive, centrally coordinated federal response. The administration is clearly trying to show decisive action and deliver tangible results.
Results, they argue, are reflected in these, pretty impressive statistics.
Right. It's about demonstrating that a firm hand can, in fact, push back against rising crime, or at least the perception of it.
Now, with all this focus on federal muscle, it's maybe easy to overlook the backbone of crime fighting, right? Our state attorneys general, local police departments.
The boots on the ground.
Exactly. The true frontline responders in communities every single day. How do their, vital roles intersect with this big federal push?
That's a crucial point, and it's a constant negotiation, isn't it?
Seems like it.
In some specific, maybe more extreme cases, local police departments, like the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department was mentioned, can actually be placed back under state control.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it emphasizes that even within a state, these power dynamics can shift. And this whole dynamic, it brings up an ongoing debate.
About federal overreach.
Exactly. Should we reduce federal overreach by maybe eliminating many federal crimes and leaving more criminal law to the states, especially for things like drug enforcement?
Right. The argument being local and state governments are closer to the problem.
Maybe better equipped, yeah. But, federal jurisdiction is still widely seen as necessary for those complex cross-border crimes that span multiple states or even international boundaries.
Yeah, makes sense.
So it's about finding that balance. Where does federal power best fit?
But are we always getting the full picture from the local level when it comes to crime stats?
That's another good question.
We've also seen concerns raised that local crime rates might appear lower if maybe police underreport incidents or even decline to file reports sometimes. Our sources mention instances where victims are apparently told, just report it directly to their insurance company, don't bother with a police report.
Which would certainly skew the numbers downwards.
You'd think so. And then there's the whole budget aspect. Washington, D.C.'s police budget, for instance, it initially decreased, but then they actually overspent by almost 10% in both 2022 and 2023.
Shows the financial pressures, right?
Yeah, the complexities of policing budgets, it just raises questions about how accurately we're really tracking local crime trends sometimes.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean when you put it together? Here's where we find this really interesting disconnect.
Okay.
On one hand, you have these powerful federal interventions, the FBI reporting this major shift, all those arrests we talked about. On the other hand, new FBI data actually shows a significant decline in the U.S. crime rate over the last year.
A decline, despite the federal push.
Well, maybe because of it or maybe alongside it, but yeah, a decline. For example, Detroit is apparently on track for its fewest murders since 1966.
Wow, since the 60s.
And both Baltimore and St. Louis are projected to have their fewest murders in nearly a decade. St. Louis homicides specifically were down 18% from last year by the end of July.
So the official data in some key cities points down, even sharply down.
Exactly. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How can so many people feel crime is rising when the data, in some places at least, tells a different story?
It's like our headlines are screaming one thing while the spreadsheets are whispering another.
Perfectly put.
Exactly. It speaks volumes about the power of narrative, doesn't it? A recent Gallup survey really highlights this stark contrast. Get this. 92% of Republicans,
92%.
0.78% of independents, and even 58% of Democrats still believe crime is rising.
That's a huge majority of Americans across the political spectrum.
A vast majority convinced things are getting worse, even as some official stats point the other way for many serious crimes.
That's a massive gap in perception.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you think so many people feel crime is increasing when, in some major cities anyway, the numbers are actually going down?
Well, it's complex, several layers, as our sources point out. One big factor is just how we consume news.
The media.
Yeah. The old saying, if it bleeds, it leads, it's still true. Negative or sensational crime stories just get more attention.
Right.
And on social media, anecdotal extremes get amplified like crazy. It makes it feel like everything is in crisis.
And good news doesn't sell.
Pretty much. Positive news doesn't get clicks and views, right? So those stories of declining crime might just not break through all the noise.
And I imagine politics plays a role here too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Partisanship is a huge driver. Our sources note that Republicans, for instance, are often more ready to believe crime is increasing with a Democrat in the White House.
Okay.
It becomes a political narrative. And there's also this perception among some people that crime isn't truly down if, quote, police can't arrest offenders and prosecutors refuse to prosecute.
So even if stats are down, there's distrust in the system.
Exactly. A belief that crime is simply going unreported or unaddressed, which shapes public perception maybe even more than raw data does.
So when we look at the Trump administration's law and order agenda, the core motivations seem pretty clear. Combat and reduce crime, yes, but also
Reestablish federal control.
reestablish a strong sense of federal control and authority, and importantly, deliver that vibe of confidence and authority through public shows of force, like we saw in D.C.
Projecting strength.
Exactly, projecting strength.
Precisely.
And this approach, it also has significant political implications, right? Shaping public perception in a way that, well, potentially benefits the administration.
How so?
For example, Republicans pushing scary crime narratives, that's a tactic described in our sources as basically as old as time for political gain. It's also seen as a strategic move to counter what they perceive as, radical left elements or these police abolition movements, provides a clear contrast in approaches to public safety.
But there's this interesting contradiction here, isn't there? Some are calling Trumponomics in policing.
Right, the rhetoric versus the policy sometimes. Yeah. While MAGA Republicans publicly say back the blue, support law enforcement, some of their proposed policies actually suggest cuts that could, impact those very departments.
It's a central tension.
How do these two things reconcile? Does it undermine the departments they say they support?
It's a really good question. Our sources explain Trumponomics in this context as kind of give away billions and cut millions.
Okay.
A key example from the first Trump administration was rescinding that Obama-era ban on transferring military equipment to local police.
Oh, I remember that. The military gear.
Right. It effectively deluged departments with battlefield-grade material. Now, supporters might say it equips police better.
But critics.
Critics contended it was often ineffective for actual community policing and maybe promoted more of an omnipresent, random intimidation vibe, potentially alienating communities.
And the proposed cuts, they extend to federal aid for local law enforcement, too.
That's right. In 2019, for instance, the Trump White House proposed a huge 50% cut to the Community-Oriented Policing Services, the COPS hiring program.
50% cut.
Wow. And more recently, the Republican Study Committee's 2025 budget proposal also suggests cutting the SOPS budget. Their argument is against federal involvement in local law enforcement.
And these cuts sometimes target specific cities?
Yeah, the sources mention these proposed cuts often specifically target Democratic cities like San Francisco and D.C. And this is where the contradiction really comes into focus. These proposals also include potential cuts to federal policing agencies themselves, like decreasing FBI personnel by 11,000, freezing hiring at the ATF.
Wait, aren't those federal agencies resources for local police?
Exactly, that's the point raised. While the rhetoric is about empowering local police, these federal agencies are often crucial training, data, and manpower resources for state and local police.
So cutting them could actually hurt local departments.
It could, in practice, leave local departments with fewer resources and less support, even if the stated intent is just to reduce federal overreach. It's a very complex balance between federal support and local autonomy.
Now, let's flick to the other side of the coin. Unsurprisingly, the response from, let's say, the radical left has been pretty strong against this federal intervention.
Very strong.
Democrats, for example, view Trump's D.C. actions as a figurative crossing of the Rubicon. Some even called it a Trumpian coup d'etat.
That's incredibly strong language, a coup d'etat.
That really is.
Indeed. And then you have more radical elements organized by groups like the Free DC Project, which our sources note gets funding from places like George Soros's Open Society, the Tides Foundation, Arabella Advisors.
Okay.
They've explicitly labeled the federal presence an occupation. And this project has ties to groups like Harriet's Dreams and the Blackout Collective.
From the Ferguson riots?
Direct action trainers from Ferguson, yeah. And they advocate for community defense, which, our sources suggest, is often used as coded language for police abolition.
So a real ideological clash playing out.
Right there on the streets.
And they seem to be using a specific strategy called dilemma action. Can you break that down? What does that mean here?
Absolutely. The dilemma action strategy, it essentially forces Trump into a choice.
Okay. What choice?
Either he lets D.C. effectively become this de facto left-wing autonomous territory where federal authority is just ignored or undermined,
Right.
or he risks a very public clash, maybe arrests, confrontations to create a viral media moment.
To generate outrage online.
Exactly. Their goal, as described in the sources, is to use such a moment to maybe justify a 2020 national uprising type of event, and ultimately to advance D.C. statehood.
So leveraging the federal intervention to push their own political agenda.
It's a calculated move, yeah, designed to draw attention and support to their cause by creating conflict.
And what's particularly interesting, or maybe frustrating for the law and order side, is that federal charges against protesters sometimes get drops later on.
That happens, yeah.
Which means, as our sources point out, radical attorneys can easily delay trials until a more favorable administration orders the DOJ to dismiss all charges.
That certainly fuels the perception of a lack of consequences, doesn't it?
You'd think so.
It absolutely would. It creates this potential cycle where intervention is met with resistance. And if that resistance isn't consistently prosecuted, it could embolden further acts and undermine the very authority the federal government is trying to project. Adds another layer of complexity to the whole enforcement picture.
And all of this, it's unfolding while police departments across the country are facing these huge challenges just staffing their ranks.
Yeah, the capacity issue is real.
Departments everywhere are dealing with a tight labor market, high vacancy rates, a shortage of qualified applicants. We've even seen some places like Memphis apparently lowering physical training standards just to get enough recruits through the door.
Which raises questions about standards, of course.
Yeah.
But it also points to the root causes of these staffing problems. The Republican Study Committee, for instance, argues that elected officials in urban areas vilifying their law enforcement officers is a big factor.
Making recruitment harder.
Yeah, significantly disincentivizes recruits, they argue. When officers feel unsupported or even maligned by parts of the community or political leadership, it creates another major barrier to attracting and retaining talent for these really crucial jobs.
Really speaks to the broader cultural and political climate affecting day-to-day policing.
Absolutely. So when you step back, what's truly fascinating here is just the sheer scale of these declared law and order efforts by the federal government, especially that jump in arrests and child rescues reported by the FBI under the new leadership.
It's impressive on paper.
Very. Yet this really aggressive stance is unfolding against that backdrop of, well, complex public perception, where, as we said, a vast majority of Americans believe crime is rising, even while official data suggests a notable decline in some major cities.
It's a real paradox.
Yeah.
And we clearly see the political motivations and the contradictions at play, too.
Sure.
The back the blue rhetoric sometimes clashing with those proposed cuts to federal aid and community policing programs. It creates a disconnect between the words and the policy. And on the other side, you have opposition groups actively using the federal intervention itself to push their own agendas, like D.C. statehood. It just creates this highly charged, dynamic environment around public safety.
Which leads us to, I think, a really important question for you, the listener, to consider. As these lines blur between federal, state, and local policing, and also between the perceived threats and the statistical realities, how will our communities ultimately define safety?
Yeah, what does safe actually mean on the ground?
And what role will each level of government, federal, state, local, truly play in achieving that safety in the years to come? It's not a simple answer.
Definitely something to consider as you observe the headlines and the conversations happening around you. Thanks for diving deep with us.